Yes, Commissioner Gordon, I understand all the work that you're doing, keeping everybody locked up during this social distancing. What I don't understand is why do the lunatics and criminals I keep catching keep getting out? Why do the regular citizens stay in and the bad guys don't? It doesn't make any sense to Commissioner Gordon, I'm gonna call you back. Hey everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Yeah. I appreciate you all being here. Hey. All right. Good enough. How's everybody doing? Everybody doing good? We ignored that first thing, right? We didn't see that, I hope. All right. Hey, Bill, we're going to keep that to ourselves, right? All right. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you all out here on a Saturday night in this happening place known as Wayne Street's YouTube page. Anybody do anything exciting today? I know some of you were out shooting guns. All right. All right. Hey, good. Toby, I think you do know what I'm talking about. I have a picture of some spent shells that I saw from today. So. How many of you had a chance to read the chapter today? Because this chapter was a little longer than most of the other ones that we have had. And he used a lot of examples. And I don't know that we're going to get real specific about his examples, but we're nearing, I think tomorrow is the last day. We're going to have, Gene, I only brought snacks for the important people tonight. Sorry. Yeah, this chapter was a little tough, I'll admit, because he used a lot of examples, and I felt like I kept getting punched between the eyes. So, all right. So that's what we're going to do for tonight is talk through some of the details of this. I don't want to get bogged down in his examples. I'd far rather talk about ours if anybody's willing to share some. So we'll kind of see where we're all at on that. All right, so we're on the first page, chapter 1.6. Joe is fixing the bathtub. Well, good luck, Joe. We'll be praying for that. All right, and we've talked about this a couple times this week. The first week, or this first section, is all about David's prayer. David is really a fascinating a character in the Bible because he is so important to so many things. And one of the things that makes him so interesting is that he is very, very real. That's one thing you always got to give to David is he is always about doing what's real. And he is not a he's not a fake character at all. And it's sometimes interesting that God chose such a guy who made as many mistakes as our buddy David did, because David was real he was real good at making mistakes and made a lot of them. We're going to talk about a few of those tonight. But the one thing we can take encouragement is, though, he's still the one God chose. Even though the guy was never afraid to jump in with both feet, he always he was the one God chose. So, all right. In fact, he right on the very first page in like the second full paragraph there, he says David was called a man after God's own heart. That's referenced a couple different times in the Bible. Then the very next sentence. Now listen to this. He, meaning David, he was devoted to God's will and worshiped passionately, gave extravagantly, and led courageously. Yet he still made mistakes, big ones. And he certainly does do that. You know, and the interesting thing is, I mean, let's not pretend like God was shocked. It's not like God was surprised that, David made his own fair share of mistakes. It wasn't like God didn't know that was coming. Yet, God still chose him. I mean, if you know the story of the call of David, he went pretty far out of his way, rejecting, I forget, 7 or 8 of Jesse's older sons till he got down to the shepherd boy that didn't even get called to the meeting with Samuel because nobody ever thought it would be him. And there he was. So what does that tell us about the people God chooses? The fact that God would choose such a character as David. Hello, Sherry Louth. And Jess, yes, it does give us hope for ourselves because we sometimes are that person. What does that tell us about God that he would choose someone like David? He often does choose the unlikely. God revels in that. I mean, we were going to do a sermon series on God choosing the unlikely. It would take us quite a bit of time to get through it. Hello, Daryl. What else? Where's everybody at tonight? What does that tell us about God that he was willing to choose David? God does find strength and weakness. But I think there's something more in David. It wasn't just David's weakness, I think, that got him chosen. I think it was David's willingness to get involved because he didn't shy away from anything. Yeah, Kim, I agree. God was big on making the person able rather than choosing an able person. And if you look at David, particularly where he started, and I agree with Bill. I mean, he took down a giant on his first day or close to his first day. I mean, he should not have stood a chance against Goliath. And I mean, we all know how that story ended. So clearly David wasn't afraid. I mean, I can't remember the story, but Goliath had been taunting the armies of Israel for a significant period of time before David came along and said, guys, why are we putting up with this? So David wasn't afraid to go across the battlefield, but God just needed somebody to go out and throw a stone at him. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things, Jess. I mean, we have seen that evidenced many times. And God seems to always find the strength he needs to accomplish the task. Yeah, certainly, Joe. David was all in. I also hope he was all in as in your bathtub is fixed. So, yes, Toby, I think got it. God's not looking for perfection. He's looking for willingness. And I think sometimes we use lack of perfection as an excuse to not be willing. And I think that's incorrect. Because, I mean, think about David. Of all things David was, unwilling was never one of them. He was always very much about charging out there. Yeah. David chose David for his heart. And that's what God described David as. I mean, we just read that in the chapter about being a man. David was a man after God's own heart. And God chose David because of his heart and just very much loved him. So a couple of you have already hinted in this direction, but let's go ahead and walk across this line. What does that tell us about us? The fact that God would choose someone like David, what does that tell us about us? Hi, Crystal and Bill. What does the fact that God was willing to choose David, what does that tell us about us? Joe, I don't know that I want to know any more about that. How is David an example of how God relates to us? Or God, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. How is David an example of how God wants to relate to us? Yes. That's one word. Cheryl, you got it. That's one word we need to be really careful about how often we throw it around. Perfection. That's a very dangerous word if we don't use it in the right context. Yeah, Kim, his hands and feet, whether they happen to be wearing awesome gloves or not. Yeah, we need to be willing and motivated. Jess, I agree. Angie, I see God use you all the time. I appreciate all your work with the homebound ministry, taking care of those folks. I know that's been kind of slow here lately because of things going on, but appreciate what you do there. And Toby with his what word am I using here? Revision. There it is. With his revision there, that God will love and accept us. And I think that's what we see with David a lot. Is that sometimes we think about God in the Old Testament being kind of vengeful and angry, and I mean, we can certainly find evidence of that. But I think if you look at how God related to David, there's a lot of grace in there, and a lot of grace, certainly more than David ever deserved, but a lot of grace in what went into that. So, yeah, Joe, trust. Hang on to that word trust, because in a mere 12 hours, we're going to come back together and have a conversation about that word trust tomorrow morning. So that's a very important thing for us to consider, because trust doesn't come real easy in our world today. And yeah, certainly, Candy, there is hope for us. Now, one of the things, speaking of trust, that's a great segue to this next question I wanted to ask. If you continue on down at the beginning of the next paragraph after the one I was just reading in, there's a prayer that Craig, the author of this chapter, puts down here. My question is, I'm going to ask the question before I read the sentence. Who in your life would you be willing to say this sentence to and mean it? Who in your life would you be willing to say this sentence to and mean it? Ready? Here's the sentence. Show me if I'm doing anything that offends or hurts your heart. Show me if I'm doing anything that offends or hurts your heart. Is there anybody in your life that you'll be willing to say this to? I don't know. I don't know if there's somebody I would be willing to say that to or not. Because that is a question that has a lot of trust coming with it. You know? Good for you, Joe. And good for you, Audra, for creating an environment like that. Because I think a lot of us would be willing to say something like this, but I don't know how much we would mean it. Because if somebody actually in turn did this, said, here's what you've done, our response might be, well, how about I give you a fat lip to go with it? And I'm not sure that's, yes, Toby, exactly. It depends on what we want to hear. Jess and her daughter and her mom, that's good. Eric and Laura, that's great. And I just think, that opens you up. And, Daryl and Jean, good. Family and close friends, Teresa. And again, we think about that. I mean, nobody's listing out like, here's 27 people I would say that to, because that's a close circle of people that we would be willing to make a statement like that to. And Trent, Trina, that's good. Yep. Gene, yes. Yes, that's a question you got to be ready because you don't know what's coming behind that. And good for you, Audra. All right, family and close friends. So you guys get the idea, though. None of us would go up to, a coworker that we spend a few hours a week with or anything like that. Nobody would go up to a stranger. Nobody would, stand in front of a group of people. Like here tonight, it says with 37 of us here. I'm not even sure I would say that to you folks here tonight. Hey, if I have offended you, why don't you go ahead and tell me? Because I'll be like, look at this block button I've learned how to use, right? I mean, that's where that goes because we have to really, really trust somebody to allow them that kind of leeway. And yes, yeah, Jess, being vulnerable, which is something we as human beings don't like to do, and that's kind of a scary prospect. And sure, Joe, it's all about course correction, my man, and I know you and Audrey do a great job with that. So I want you to think about this sentence. Show me if I'm doing anything that offends or hurts your heart, because that's going to be kind of the basis of the rest of our conversation for here tonight. So, all right. Hang on here. I got to check my note. Okay. All right. So, we got it. Hey, Trina. Good. Your kids? I mean, that's even more scary. I wonder if they'd be willing to say that to you. I mean, it just depends on the relationship that you have. All right. So he goes on to speak here a little bit. And then, again, I don't know what page I'm on, but how do you hear from God? That I'm reading from that paragraph. If you want to skim down just a little bit, how do you hear from God about any offensive way in you? How do you hear that? And he says, let me suggest 3 things. And then I read the rest of the chapter, and I couldn't figure out what the other 2 were, but I did get the first one. The first one is consider what others have told you about you. Now, this is, again, you all know I'm not afraid to argue with the author of these books, and I'm not afraid to disagree with them. I struggle with this a little bit because there's got to be a disclaimer here. As somebody who has had plenty of people in my life point out problems that I have, point out problems I didn't realize I had, point out problems that I don't understand what they even are, point out problems that I never thought of before, point out problems of things that happened when I wasn't even there. I mean, I've been blamed for stuff that I had to go look up what it even was. So, again, I don't know that Craig is saying this, but I don't know that everybody deserves a free pass to speak into your life in this way. And that's the reason why I hit that sentence so hard a moment ago, is because the circle of people that we're going to allow that kind of leeway to, speak into us, say things that could be hurtful. And you guys did a great job kind of running that down. I don't know that everybody gets that right. Because there are some people that will come up and criticize me. I don't have it as much in this church, but in previous experiences, caught a lot of criticism about things. And, I had to say, I'm sorry, you're wrong. That's not the case. The problem here ain't me, it's you. And I know that in the greater scheme of things, that's not always a good way to go, but it wasn't that I was rationalizing the behavior. It's what they were criticizing before I didn't do. And or didn't think of, or didn't whatever. And maybe things could have been done differently, but the blame that was trying to be assigned to me, I'm like, sorry, I'm not scapegoating this one. And so I think that one of the things that we need to be careful about is, if you allow everybody the right to say things and you take all that they say to heart, one of 2 things going to happen. You're either going to decide that you're the most worthless piece of garbage ever and have no redeeming value because it seems like everybody got something mean to say to you, or you're going to be so callous that even if somebody comes along with a legitimate something, somebody who cares about you and is actually trying to help you, you're not going to hear it because you've got the the armor of criticism on, and it's not going to go away. So I don't believe everybody gets a right to criticize. I mean, I can remember. Oops, bumped my watch here. I can remember coming through the process to become a minister. All those years ago. And man, I go before these boards and agencies and different things for interviews, and those people were just absolutely brutal. And you're supposed to grovel at their feet and all this stuff, and I did that, but I would leave those meetings knowing that their job was to find stuff wrong with me, and I would say, "Look, some of the stuff is not correct. It's not wrong. Sorry, I'm not going to accept it." And the reason I had to do that was because they would criticize so much that I'd be like, I should go back and resign because clearly I am not worthy. And I think that there are just some people who are just set to, as Joyce said there, some people are just mean. They're just set to constant criticism. And I don't feel like we should allow those people free reign to speak criticism into every piece of our lives. Again, I'm not saying that Craig is saying that. I'm saying this is a warning to you who are here. Because, yes, we all have things in our lives that we need to improve upon and grow about. Yes, absolutely. But the only way somebody gets the right to speak into that is if they've earned it. If somebody who hasn't earned that right, they get, I won't say no say, but they don't get nearly as much say. So, and he's going to talk about that as we go on, but I want to make that crystal clear before we proceed forward. Just because somebody criticizes something doesn't mean that it's valid. Okay, and I just want to say that as clearly as I can. So, yeah, and I would, and Teresa, we're going to talk about that because some of the things we got to take to God before we allow these things to work. Jess, these things can sting, particularly when they come from somebody we care about and we value their opinion. But those are the ones that count. When you're getting criticism from somebody who's not earned the right to criticize, that stuff's just got to slide right on off. Because you start earning all that, it's not going to mean anything. So, yes, people can be cocky. I've experienced that. I'm sure you all have too. And yeah, Toby and I are on the same page there. The relationship with the person determines the amount of value we place on their opinion. And you have to own that because this doesn't work otherwise. Because if you're just looking for people to criticize you, they're amazingly easy to find. So not everybody gets that right. And if you allow everybody to have, basically, if you allow everybody to have the right to criticize you and you're going to take it all to heart, you basically have said, nobody gets to criticize me because everybody says the same thing. So, yeah, one of the things he's talking about in this section, and I think he's going to talk about a little later in this chapter, is the ability that we as humans have to rationalize. Now, that's the other end of what I'm talking about, because certainly I know I'm as good at that as anybody. We can rationalize some amazing stuff, amazingly bad stuff. And I think that criticism and people who are pointing out problems that you have, and we're going to talk specifically about that a little bit later, we are using those things to balance rationalization. So if somebody you care about comes along, and I don't want to give away too much of where we're going, but somebody you care about comes along and says, hey, what about this? You can look at it and say, okay, what about that? Or you can look at that and say, no, not that. But if somebody legitimately has your best interest in mind, you got to watch rationalizing that away because that can be difficult. So, yeah. Brutality and Candy. I know you know about that as well as anybody in the chat tonight. Yeah, sometimes the church is the worst place to try to find grace, and Wayne Street is an exception to that. But all right, okay. I think I've hit that one hard enough. All right. If you skip down to the next paragraph after where I'm at there, he says he's talking about a professor he had from a counseling class. Yeah, Cheryl, I agree. And actually, that's the point I'm right about to make. In the next paragraph, he says you need to love and trust somebody in order for it to work. That cannot be overstated. If you don't love and trust them, and they don't love and trust you, their opinion, shrinks and the value that it has. So you don't want to just allow anybody to come along and burst your bubble, because people will. Okay. Now, one of the tests that we can run, and actually I really liked this paragraph, this next paragraph he wrote, because I think this is a good test you can run. Because sometimes somebody will say something and all of a sudden you're like, I'm not sure how to take that. Have you ever been in that situation? Somebody will say something and it sounds like there might be a little more edge than maybe they meant. So now you're wondering, well, did you just say it wrong? Did I take it wrong? Is there something else going on here? Here is a great test to see if criticism is about helping you or about building up the other person. Okay, what is the critique that you are receiving? What is it designed to do? Here's the test. Is there something about your life that loved ones suggest is unhealthy or unwise? Now, the reason I like that sentence, and let me read it again, make sure y'all got it. Is there something about your life that loved ones suggest is unhealthy and unwise? There's somebody you love, somebody that you trust. Are they saying, in what they are saying, are they saying you have something in your life that's unhealthy? I mean, let me use an obvious example. If I come in and, I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding from my neck. Somebody who cares about me might say, Tim, you're making a mess all over the floor, or something like that. And the reason they say that is because you're a big guy, Tim, and if you die, we don't have to drag you out of here. So obviously do something about the bleeding. So in what they're pointing out, are they trying to help you? Are they trying to point out something that's not what it should be? Or is there a grandstanding piece to it? And I don't know if I'm saying this clear enough, but is it about you in a positive way, or is it about you in a negative way? If you fix whatever it is they've critiqued, if you make whatever adjustment they appear to be observing needs to happen, if you make that adjustment, does it make you better, or does it make them feel better? Because if it's about them feeling better, or about them saying, gee, gosh, look, I was right, you're allowed to allow some of that criticism to slide off your back. Not all of it, but the weight of it is taken back a little bit, because it's very important to keep in mind that the only way this works, and he's going to make this point really clearly throughout the rest of this chapter, the whole point of this is about you growing. And if they're criticizing or saying something critical, and it's about them, doing that, it's I don't want to say it's useless, but it does change things, because a lot of times people will come along and want to build themselves up by stepping over you, and that's not right. It doesn't matter who it is, whether you love or trust them or not. So if you're ever trying to figure out what you need to do about a criticism somebody gave, ask yourself this question. If I fix this, and whatever fixing this means, if I fix this, are you better off, or am I better off? And let me tell you something, 25 years of working in the church has taught me that. If we, turn the music down, or if we play the organ more, or if we sing the Gloria Patri, or if we sing everybody's favorite hymn every Sunday, or if we have a sermon that's only 18 minutes long, or we say the prayer at this certain spot, or sing this after the offering, or whatever it is, when somebody's criticizing, my question always has to be, and this is hard, but my question always has to be is, by fixing this, am I getting better, or are you getting better? Because if we're coming up here and it's about fixing something for you, guess whose problem it is? Answer is not mine. And I think that's where we have to be careful about that, because there's a lot of people who want to take their garbage and dump it in your life, and that they don't have that right. So, all right, there's a bunch of chats here I'm getting behind because you guys get me wound up. So, the presentation doesn't change the real truth. That's true. I mean, kind words can still cut, depending on what's behind them. That's absolutely true. Yes, Eric, you got to consider the source. I mean, we've talked about that many times. And Candy, I'm sorry. Yeah, having that experience with an employee right now. Yes, the sting can't come from if it's legitimate and it's your problem and you need to fix it, yes, the sting can get very stingy from that. I don't know if that's a word, but you get my idea. You get very intense. So, yeah, loving the other person, or is it self-serving? That's right, Teresa. You got to consider the source. Yeah, Gene, that's where he's going to go, and that's what we're going to talk about here in a second. Is he says if you hear it more than once from independent sources, probably need to pay a little more attention to it, which is true. So, over the next couple of pages, he gives a couple of examples, and I'm just going to hit these real fast as we go through them. He says the possibility of if a couple of people say you play video games too much, a couple of people say you drink too much. A couple of people say maybe you're making poor choices in dating. And he uses his own example of being a slave to his mobile phone. I mean, we don't know anybody who does that, right? People who are addicted to their smartphone. He had a very poignant example of that as he missed his son scoring a goal in a soccer game because he was, horsing around on Facebook or whatever. It's so funny. I'm saying y'all should spend less time on screens. Okay, there might be a little hypocrisy in me saying that over the screen, but the idea is there's a lot of life going on around us, and he was missing it, and his friends wanted to help him with it. It wasn't like him not being on his phone would have helped them, even though his kids probably would have liked it, so would his wife. But the idea is, dude, you're missing a lot of life staring at that electronic device in your hand, and they wanted to help him quit doing that, and they kept saying it. And finally, when enough people said it to him, he said, maybe we got to do that. So, yeah, Kim, I agree. There are some people who like to feel better by putting other people down. Those are the exact people I'm warning you about, because we all have run into them. In fact, at some point, many of us may have been that person. But you just want to be real careful about allowing them a lot of authority in your life. Okay, so after this little experience with missing the goal in the soccer game, he come to the realization. So if you keep scrolling down in there, he says, God showed me clearly I was settling for a counterfeit reality and missing out on what mattered most. I think that sentence clearly has to do with living his life through his social media or whatever. But the big thing that gives us, and this is why I hit the point so hard a minute ago about be real careful about how much authority you give somebody else to criticize you, is if somebody is going to criticize at you, you got to make sure what they're doing it for, but you have to have confirmation from God. I've had, people come along and say, gosh, you reference Christ a lot in your sermons. And I'm like, yeah. And if that's a criticism, you might want to find a different church, because that's kind of how things work around here. But there's a lot of things in that. You have to be able to confirm it with the Lord. And God gave him a pretty on the nose example with his soccer goal, but you got to be able to confirm that with God. There has to be a godly portion of this, because if there isn't, then all you have left is, yeah, exactly. You're yelling at your kids because they're screaming, and that's very productive. And we've all played that game at one time or another. So, but here's the deal, though. Here's the sticking point. If we hear from a couple people and we're trying to determine how and what transformation needs to happen, we run into a problem, or we run into a scary situation when we start praying hey, God, will you search me? I mean, that's the prayer of the week, right? Allowing God to look at what's going on in here and in here and all these different places. And you're opening yourself up for God to say, yep, so let me send you a few people. Let me send you some evidence. Let me send you some situations where some of your weaknesses may shine through. And that's a super fun experience to realize you're bad at something. That's fantastic. But the idea is you're saying, God, will you point out some places I need to grow? And that can be not so fun, because there's nothing worse than rationalizing your own garbage. and suddenly realize you're wrong, especially if you've been doing it for a while. When you had that moment where you're like, oh my word, what have I done? And then you feel like the biggest dumbhead that there ever was because you have been working so hard to try to hold up this facade, and you realize the person you're trying to fool is this guy. And and fooling yourself only works for so long. And there's nothing worse than having that rationalization rug pulled out from under you, because you will fall flat on your face or some other place, and you don't want to be doing that. So just know that if you're taking seriously the theme of the week and praying for God to search you, that's the potential thing you're opening yourself up to. I still want you to do it, but that's what you're opening yourself up to. And one of the things he said, if skip down a few more paragraphs, he says, if I'm honest, speaking of himself, if I'm honest, my ability to rationalize is scary. How many of you can say amen to that sentence? How many of you can say amen to the sentence that your ability to rationalize your own behavior is downright frightening? You have a PhD in rationalization. Can I get a witness from the congregation? I ain't going on till I get a couple amens. Thank you, Amy. All right. Thanks, Christina and Teresa. All right. Eric, Jess, Jean, Bill, thank you. All right, cool. All right, here is big amen from Joe, Sherry, Trina, Crystal, Angie, Bill. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Now, from here, he goes on to that funny example he had about he gets mad. He was upset about people driving on the shoulder of the road, and then he ended up doing it. And some kid from his congregation saw him, and they were kind of ripping on him a little bit about it. That's hilarious. But he comes down. If you skip down, if you're following along in the book, go down. It's quite a ways now. There's a paragraph that starts out with, "This is another reason why this dangerous prayer is not only important but imperative." And this is the sentence I want to spend a little time with you on. So hear this sentence. We need God's help to see the sin that's difficult to see in the mirror. You hear that? We need God's help to see the sin that's so difficult to see in the mirror. Can't see that without God's help. So I made a note on this sentence, and I want you to think about this with me, because I think this is interesting to think about. One of the things that we have talked about a couple different times is how Satan just relishes the opportunity to needle us with our past sins, needle us with our past regrets, failures, hurts, pains, hurts, hang-ups, and habits, like CR would say. There's a lot of that going around, and Satan likes to shove that in our face. So it's interesting that those kinds of problems, Satan puts them up there so that nobody can miss it. However, if there's a problem that you could do something about, Satan hides that one from you. Now think about that for a second. The stuff you can't do anything about, the things you can't go back and change, no matter how badly we all got stuff we'd like to go back and do over. We carry those regrets. Satan loves to shove them in our face, but there's nothing we can do about them, and he puts them in our face as often as he can. However, problems in our lives that we could make some adjustments, could make some changes, could make some adjustments, could do something about, he hides those. Hides them. You see how both of those things are damaging? By putting things in your face that you can't do anything about, that's frustrating. By hiding things from you that you could do something about is damaging. And it's discouraging once you get to the point that you realize that you're going the wrong way and something needs to happen. It's hurtful. And any of you who ever wonder why I get so bent out of shape about the devil, this is the game that he plays. He hurts people real bad with this by putting things in your face that hurts and hiding things from you that possibly could hurt worse, depending on what it is. And so I want you to keep that in mind. Sometimes it's the hardest to see our problems we could fix. It's the easiest to see our problems that we can't fix. And so often we're standing there crying over something we can do nothing about when there's stuff right at our feet we could change, and we can't get over the big thing that we can't fix. And so I want you to keep that all in mind, because look, we all got hurts, hangups, and habits. We got them, and they come to us from a lot of different sources, and they hurt in a lot of different ways. But we don't want to focus on those so much that we don't see our own faults, as Kim says here, and that can be very, very hurtful. So I'll read the sentence to you one more time. Since Cheryl liked it so much, I'll read it again. We need God's help to see the sin that's so difficult to see in the mirror. It's hard to see. We need God to take Satan's blinders off so we can look at it and have the chance to do something about it. Because, I mean, let's face it, friends. We serve a God who gives us grace, empowers us, gives us gifts, skills, and talents, abilities, friendships, relationships, experiences, makes us actually very powerful. And Satan is working overtime to try to pull all the power out of what we have. So to make us, Joe, deny. Denial of either what we could do or what we can't do, to the point that it can become damaging, can be hurtful, can be counterproductive in every sense of the word. Yeah, using the truth against us, Joe. Satan's real good at that. Changing is hard work. Anybody's ever done it can tell you that. And Gene, it's easier to have self-pity, because by having self-pity, we expect somebody else to do it. And boy, we see that mindset just everywhere today. Cheryl, that is the problem, and that's the purpose of this sentence, is that sometimes we need God to help us tell the difference. It's the serenity prayer that you all know. Help me change the things I can, to leave the things alone I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. I know that's not exactly the prayer, but that's the gist of it. It's about not getting distracted by what I can't change, to the point that I don't change what I could change, I think, or something like that. But yeah, so that's the idea. And you don't want to allow that a lot of leeway in your life. Okay. All right, let's turn the page here. Hi, Cheryl Miller. Is Jack here tonight too? So let's look at a couple of examples of rationalizations and things that we have all seen people rationalize, and in a weak moment we probably rationalize them ourselves. So, and the ones that he points out are things like pornography. I mean, that's one I see a lot of people rationalize. People's temper. Anybody got a temper out there? Anybody ever been hurt by somebody's temper? Ever had your temper go off because you're actually mad at not the person in front of you, but mad at somebody else, and that followed you into a different relationship? That's a more common thing than you think. And it's one of those things where you get real mad, and at the end of it, you're like, why was I that mad? And then the wrong person was here. And you say, it's not my temper. That's just how I am. That excuse holds no water. You got people talking about gossiping. I'm not gossiping. I'm, whatever. I'm talking, or whatever. And it's a lot of emojis there, Joe. Gambling. I mean, gambling can be a very embarrassing problem because you don't understand why you can't stop. But I've seen that, and I have a tendency toward that myself. And selfishness. I mean, rationalization is easy. Yeah. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Sherry, and thank you, Cheryl. So, rationalization is easy. I mean, we can get real good at that and allow it to do a lot of things that we won't like too much. But it's Satan's game, and we need to not let him play his game. We need to throw him off his game, because what we have, what we are, and what we've been called to do is too important to get weighed down in his garbage. So, All right, after he has that little section where he talks about rationalizing, and obviously I'm not asking any of you to, I'm not going to ask you to disclose what you're rationalizing, but I think you all get the picture there clear enough. There's one thing when you're rationalizing, there's a certain word that comes out. And over the years, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but any of you who've been around any kind of a commercial, whether it's TV commercials, radio commercials, YouTube commercials, commercials in the newspaper, online commercials, doesn't matter. There's a word that always pops up. And I think when we rationalize, this word pops up again. So one of your takeaways for tonight and for this first session, first of these 3 sessions we're going to have, or 3 weeks we're going to have, I hope that you'll take this with you, the danger of this particular word. And anytime that you've done something, and again, I'm not saying this word is always bad, but you just want to be careful how you use it. And the word I want to warn you about, and he uses it down here in the next paragraph, is the word deserve. Be real careful with that. Because anytime you do something and your explanation of it is because I deserve to do that, that's a dangerous place to be. Maybe you do, but I'm just telling you to be careful. I'm not saying that again, that you never deserve to have anything. I'm not saying that. But whenever people are coming up and saying, maybe not this, if you're only come back to that as, well, I deserve to do that, you're gonna be, watch out for that, because that gets you in trouble. And you see here, he's going to, I marked this word deserve because it jumped off the page at me, because it's one I hear people get themselves in trouble with all the time. But he's going to launch into a discussion here of David and Bathsheba. And any of you who know the story of David and Bathsheba, one of the things, and he hits on it here a little bit, but not as hard as he could, is David, obviously he goes for a walk on the roof of the palace. So he's out going for a walk. And so he's walking along and he looks down and he sees Bathsheba taking a bath. And instead of walking away like a gentleman should have, he decided to stare. And the stare got him in trouble. But one of the things that we're told about in there is that this event took place during the time of year when the kings go to war. If you go back and read the story of David and Bathsheba, and he probably gives a scripture reference, I'll find it here in a second. If you go back and read where the story begins, the very first sentence is, this was the time of year when the kings go to war, yet David's in the palace. He didn't go to war. He didn't do what he wasn't where he was supposed to be. And idle hands with the devil's workshop, my friends, that is a true statement. And that's what got him in trouble, because had he been out in the field with his men where he belonged, Bathsheba wasn't out there, that wouldn't have been a problem. But he decided he deserved to send Joab and the boys out there to take care of things. And with all this idle time now, he decided he was deserving a little more, and he decided he deserved another man's wife. And that, as you could imagine, caused some problems. So thank you, Joe, for that excellent example of how this works. You fix a bathtub, you get warm chocolate chip cookies. Audra, I'm going to let you field that one. So, all right. All right, one of the other things, after he goes through this little discussion on Bathsheba, if you skip down a few paragraphs, comes this sentence. And now Craig's talking about himself. He says, in my own life, I've learned that when I'm defensive, it's an indication that I need to pay close attention and be open to what God wants to show me. You ever, any of you who are parents have had this wonderful thing. And when we had foster kids, we would see this too. You ask them a question and you get too big of a response, and suddenly you're like, I'm on to something here, aren't I? And, that's where if they just would have said no or blew you off, you probably would have ignored it. But it's the big reaction to let you know, there's something here. And whenever somebody comes along to you and says, hey, there's this thing and whatever, and you feel yourself, that rage kind of bubble out of you, that may be an indication that you're trying to rationalize something and you need some energy behind it. And that's what that will lead to. because as Bill says there, a feeling of deservement leads to entitlement. Entitlement is always bad, always. And you just want to watch out for that, because anytime you have a sense of entitlement, you are heading to a bad place. So, hey, let me pause here for just a second and say, for the first time throughout this entire study, we have 40 people here. We have 40 people logged in. We've never hit 40 that I've seen yet. So, hey, welcome all 40 of you. I certainly appreciate you being here. And now we're back to 39. That was fun while it lasted. So, all right. So, defensiveness. What does defensiveness yield? What does defensiveness reveal about what's going on? When we feel ourselves getting defensive, or we watch somebody else be defensive, what does that reveal? When somebody doth protest too much, as Shakespeare said, what does that reveal? Do you think, or that you've experienced, or that you have seen? What does that defensiveness show us? Insecurity, Cheryl, I agree with that. It may reveal we're not as solid in our position as we thought we were. Yeah, Joe, defensiveness normally means there's more going on than what we see, especially if the defensiveness, the intensity of the defensiveness is higher than the situation would dictate otherwise. Whenever somebody has a reaction that's not appropriate for the current situation, that's an indication something may be going on. And that's true in us too. You feel yourself reacting and you're going, I may be overblowing this a little bit. You want to step back and evaluate, see what's going on. It could be denial, Bill. That's true. Bill Martin, unwillingness to change, because nobody really is that. Teresa might tell us we're hiding something. Now, we would apply all of those things to other people. The challenge may be to apply them to ourselves, because we all know when we might have got a little carried away with stuff and maybe made a bigger deal out of something than we should have. But that reveals that to us. So, yeah, Kim, not wanting to admit the truth. Yeah, put up that wall of emotion, and that will insulate you from that. These past weeks of the coronavirus have proven that. I guess it depends on your definition of overreaction. I mean, who knows? I think what our overreaction in this particular case has revealed to us is that we didn't know what the coronavirus was, nor what it was capable of. It may come out that, all these precautions we're taking were too much. We probably will never know. But, yeah, Candy, insecurity. You can see a lot of that. So, all right, cool. So be watching your own feelings of defensiveness, because that can really tell you something. Let's see. He goes on to tell a story about a time. I'm not sure I'm following what he's talking about here. Apparently, he was using some kind of inappropriate humor during a sermon. I have no idea why a pastor would do that. I mean, I've said some dumb things, but I try not to intentionally step in that. But finally, he says he realized that his humor was too crude when he realized he didn't want his daughter hearing that. How on earth he didn't think of that in the first place, I have no idea. But he says there, as he was up there in the pulpit and he was about to say something that he didn't want his daughter to hear. And again, I have no idea why he would have planned to say something he didn't want his daughter to hear. Maybe he assumed she wasn't listening. But yeah, Toby, thanks. But one of the things he said then when he got to the end of this experience that, again, I don't understand. Hey, we're at 41. Welcome, everybody. Once he got to this moment that he couldn't understand, it says, in one moment, God got through to me. So all these other people have been saying, we need to PG this a little more. And apparently he wouldn't do it. And finally, in that moment, he looked over at his daughter, and God apparently punched him in the nose and let him see that, this is not good. I don't appreciate this. And God got through to him. My question to you is, my first of two questions is, hey, Valerie, welcome. First of two questions is, how terrible is that moment? Y'all had that moment. Yeah, Gene, I agree. I mean, that's something that I would hope I would never allow to have happen, but who knows? We all have had that described as a come to Jesus moment where suddenly you think life comes into real big focus, and we become aware of something that for whatever reason we hadn't been aware of before. How terrible are those moments? How terrible is that moment when you realize you're out of line and people have been telling you and you ignored it, you rationalized it, you explained it away, whatever. How terrible are those moments when you realize what you've done? Yeah, remorse, absolutely, and regret, certainly, Gene, no doubt. How terrible are those moments? That's honest, Cheryl. I appreciate that. We just run and hide. Yeah, I felt that. Those moments can be pretty rough, no doubt. However, yes, Joe, I know that the metallic taste in your mouth and your heart hurts. When it's real bad, you can feel that. So that's how terrible it can be. On the other hand, how wonderful can those moments be? Look, yeah, just like Bill says, it is humiliating, especially even the way he did it in front of a congregation. I'd have wanted to climb into the air conditioner duct, but yeah, and that terrible moment, Kim, could give us motivation to change. Eric, it does wake us up, motivates us. But how wonderful is it to have a realization that you are about to become a better person? That realization may take a little while to happen, but isn't it wonderful to know that instead of smiting us or whatever, we're going to get a chance to make a change, to turn and try something else. Yeah, absolutely, Joe. It can be beautiful, and it is beautiful. Again, that doesn't make it fun, at least, especially not in the moment. But it is an opportunity for us to turn and go a different direction. It shows us, again, this conversation's about to go full circle. So let's go back to where we started. I really hammered on you guys at first about the danger of just allowing everybody to criticize and taking it all to heart. I really hammered you on that. And the reason is because if we have that moment where we're like, oh my word, and we get a chance to make a change, that is God doing for us what we need to do for other people. Is he criticizing us? Yes, but it's for our own good, not necessarily for his good. It's for our good. It's repentance. That's true, Gene. It's part of the pruning process, as Teresa said, and it's refreshing. It's a new start, but it's God doing for us what's going to help us, even if it's not great at the time. And in that moment, it gives us the chance to, grow into a new plane and grow into a new level, grow into a new awareness. And in doing that, gives us a chance to start over. That's a beautiful thing. And it's all about our good. It's not about God getting his way. It's about us growing. And that's why it works. So all right. The last note I made here, and oh my gosh, you guys get me talking so much. Next to the last sentence says, denying the truth does not change facts. Denying the truth does not change facts. So, my friends, keep that in mind. If there's something that's going haywire in your life, there's something not what it should be. Somebody's trying to help you with that, or God's trying to prune that in you. You could try to rationalize it, but if it's true that it is a problem, denial's not going to make it go away. And so hang in there and let that go, because in the note that I made on this is it says denial, the experience, the choice of denying something, the experience of denying something, that is the process by which a fact goes from helpful to dangerous. You deny a fact, that fact becomes dangerous. You accept a fact, and again, by fact, I mean something that is undoubtedly true. You accept something as fact, it can become very helpful. It can protect you, it can help you do something better, it can help you learn, help you grow. I mean, something good. It could help you know a situation you don't want to be a part of. I mean, facts can do lots of things, but they become dangerous when you deny them. When there's something that is factually true and you deny it, you've made that fact poisonous to you, and it will hurt you. So that's why facts. You miss facts with denial, nothing good's going to come from that. So just like Christina says, you can rationalize it all you want. Facts don't change. People can grow over time and things like that, but things that are facts, if somebody comes to you with a legitimate something, denying it makes that observation dangerous to you. You need to keep that in mind. So, all right, I think we are at the last page. We are. That means tomorrow night we're going to do 1.7, and this is the last of phase 1. So we're going to be done with Search Me tomorrow night. I'm sorry, Joe. What did you say you're not getting? Oh, so good. So, all right, cool. So how's everybody doing here? Everybody doing good? I thought you guys would appreciate that. So, yeah. All right. Well, tomorrow night we will finish up phase 1. We'll be here, the good Lord willing, at 8 o'clock to talk about 1.7. Hey, I tell you what, if you all want to hang around here for just a second, don't leave yet. I got a gift for you. Hang on. I'm going to email and text these out, but I'll give them to you folks now because you're good enough to be here. You look over in the chat. Oh, copy and paste is stupid. There's the link for First Light tomorrow morning, and I will be emailing and texting these out in the next few minutes. You can go over and set a reminder. Here is the link for Awaken for tomorrow. You guys can go set reminders for that. Like I said, I'll be texting these out tonight and in the morning, and I will be emailing them out here before I go home tonight. So that way you can all have them. But no, Toby, no singing. No singing. You guys got my Batman skit. So here's my gloves. I don't know where my mask went, but so. Nope, it doesn't premiere till tomorrow morning, Toby. Sorry, you got to come tomorrow morning. Sleep in is like 10:45. So, yeah, I hope you all will come back in the morning, and then there'll also be a link for tomorrow night. Is that a fact, D? I don't know that that's a fact. So, thanks, Jack and Cheryl. Thanks for coming out. Lisa, appreciate you being here. So, thank you, everybody. I love you all very much. Tomorrow morning, like we say, we'll have live premieres. I'll be here live chatting everything, and appreciate the chance for you to get together. And y'all know what you need to do now that the live stream's over, right? Go wash your hands. Have a good night, everybody.